Metallica's Master of Puppets album is a perfect metal album of sort of modern times. Starts with an acoustic intro, then all hell breaks loose. The first song is called Battery. Sort of a product of its time, I guess, the 1980s, so there's songs about TV evangelists and war and cocaine and whatever, but it still sounds absolutely perfect today. Just a mix of absolute sort of crushing brutality, which is from their thrash roots, with a lot of really sort of intricate, intelligent guitar parts, fantastic musicianship. There was a band that, an album that sold 1 million copies sort of in their first year, brought them into the mainstream, and really I think ushered in a new age of metal. Sort of, they were the band that sort of transformed metal in the mid-80s along with Guns N' Roses, and still stands up today as, I'd say, one of the top 3 albums ever made.
Pearl Jam's 10 for me was just such a massive sort of moment in my life, because it was one of the first rock albums that I heard that really seemed to sort of speak to me, and I think it speaks to sort of any kid who's grown up with a sort of disjointed family situation, or any kid who's ever grown up that just thinks sort of the world's a mess. And Eddie Vedder just had a lyrical way that basically spoke to all those sorts of people. And meanwhile, the music was melodic, it was heavy, really heavy in places, it was really beautiful in other places, and it just sort of had that bit of everything that just made me feel suddenly rock music was really for me. So that's why I think Pearl Jam is one of my favourite, certainly probably my favourite band of all time, and that album is one that I'll still keep going back to again and again.
I'd probably say Blizzard of Oz. That was an interesting one because Ozzy had just, he'd been kicked out of Black Sabbath. He really had something to prove on that album, and it was Randy Rhoads, and him at his finest. And I just think, and the band, it didn't sound like a backup band playing for Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, that really sounded like a band. And the songs are great, the riffs are great, the solos are amazing, the vocal melodies all sound good. To me, Blizzard of Oz has like everything you could want in a heavy metal album, as a fan and as a musician.
Led Zeppelin 2.
Why would that be, Mickey?
Because I loved it. It's a great album. I mean, because it had still had the blues influence from the New Yardbirds and the early Zeppelin. But great songs, great production, great playing. It just stood out for me, that album. Even at the time, as I said, I was listening to the Allman Brothers and people like that. Led Zeppelin 2 for me is a standout rock album.
I think Electric Ladyland. Even though Hendrix was American, I think of him as being a Brit, really. It's, it was recorded in America, but I think the approach to the songs, especially when he covered stuff, and the guitar is just still another world. I think probably Electric Ladyland for me.
I think the one album that sums the whole metal thing up would have to be Masters of Reality. And that's Master of Reality, isn't it? Can I do that again?
Okay.
I think of any album that sums up heavy metal, it's got to be Sabbath, Master of Reality. I think each song is like we knew what we were doing then in the studio. It's the third album. We've been on loads of tours. We were well drugged up. And it's just every song was like we knew exactly what direction we wanted to go into on that album, because we knew it was successful then. So we had all the confidence and everything. And we just thought, well, we've done a couple of heavy albums, let's do a real heavy album then. It's just every song's really, really heavy.
Yeah, I think probably Aerosmith Rocks. And it's just one of those records, every time I listen to it, I think that to me was the epitome of Aerosmith's career. That was their swan song, that record. And they were just so on their game, they were on a few games at that point, but.
Pantera's Vulgar Display of Power. definitely. I think that the whole circle of what metal to me is. Earlier stuff, of course, any Sabbath album. Later stuff, Us, Slipknot, System of a Down. Earlier, like thrash kind of stuff. Because I can't give them one. Stormtroopers of Death, SOD for thrash kind of stuff. Sepultura, that's a good rounded out. And Motley Crue for more of the glam, kind of hard glam stuff. There you go. Wasn't one, but one from each genre of metal because there's so many different ones.
Swans and Holy Money was an absolutely life-changing record for me. Read a review of it. It sounded like the most horrific thing that had ever been made. Went straight out, bought it. I was 16 years old. Put the needle on the record. Just wasn't prepared for it. I couldn't believe that someone had made a record like that. I just no, you can't do that. That's not allowed. It was something just so arid and seemingly dead about it that I just couldn't get my head around it. It just really chilled me to the bone, and it's almost like the first time you see something like Faces of Death, is that you just want to keep going up against it to test your own instinctive reaction from it. Like, you know, it literally chills your blood. And so I put it on before, I put it on in the evening, woke up in a cold sweat. I used to go I made a tape of it, used to go to college, and trying to get my head around it, just becoming more and more obsessed with it. And it was just so physical, so just so immune to anything else as sort of its own sort of completely enclosed world. And I think, and that really opened me up to something that seems inhuman, and yet the more you listen to it, the more it really kind of it resonates so deeply with something really, really human about you. And I think that really opened me up to a lot of what metal is about.
As you're asking me this, I won't say Hendrix because I know Ken will say Hendrix, and I'm not going to take that off him. So I'll say any early Deep Purple album for me was the epitome of metal, and it really set a massive precedent.
I'm going to say Are You Experienced because that's the thing that changed my life, and I think like most metal fans out there would have to agree. Something does happen, you either hear it or you go and see a band and you just go, that's it, that's your journey through life. I think that you get that injection and nothing can, maybe up until that point you thought you were supposed to listen to what your big brother listens to or your parents or your sister or something. But if it happens to you, that's when you become a heavy metal fan, and that's when it happened to me when I first heard Are You Experienced.
Favorite metal album would have to be Deep Purple Made in Japan. I think that everything on it is just the beginnings of a recipe for something that was beyond them. And Speed King, Smoke in the Water, The Mule, Highway Star. Oh fuck, what an album. That was fucking brilliant. Melodic, heavy, soulful, swinging. Why can't music be like that anymore?
Definitely Ride the Lightning by Metallica. Definitely one of the best, it explains metal to me personally, because definitely that was like the first Metallica record that I really, really listened to. And it was so different from Kill 'Em All. Like Kill 'Em All was way thrashy. And Ride the Lightning had was a little slower, a little more thought out, and definitely had great guitar on it. Definitely some amazing solos on it, and definitely the drumming was pretty good too. So that is a great metal album.
And I would say SOD's Speaking You Shall Die is probably the genesis of what is going on today in metal. You have a mixture of hardcore and metal together, which a lot of people don't realize, but all traces back to bands like SOD. And even if you don't like hardcore or metal, you'll love the lyrics. They're the most satirical that you'll find and gut-wrenching. So I encourage you to go out and buy SOD, Speaking You Shall Die.
So I would say Rain and Blood for me is like the definitive metal record. It's 28 minutes long. It's just grabs you by the throat from the first second it comes on to the last second it goes off. That record's really perfect in every way. There's nothing that could be better about it. To me, it defines metal. It defines the intensity. It defines just everything great about metal is in those 28 minutes. It's just like a 28-minute crash course in why metal is as great as it is.
I think in terms of a heavy album, particularly one that kind of started the whole thing off, maybe Led Zeppelin 2. I mean, that's more towards my kind of taste of blues-influenced heavy rock.
I would say one album that always sticks with me that I never got tired of listening to, mainly for the title track, is Every Picture Tells a Story by the Faces. You know, because Faces were a great band, and I mean, a lot of, Gus Rod's still around, and his image is quieting down a bit. After all, we're all getting a bit older, but he's still, I dare say he's probably still the same old Rod. Because I mean, I know I'm still the same old filthy, although I've got grey hair, and the physical side of it changes a bit. But in here, I'm still the same, and I'm sure Rod is as well. And that album to me was that meant a lot to me when I was, in my early days, just because I loved the lyrics, because I've always been a great fan of lyrics and stories, and I thought that particularly the title track just describes a lot of things, that you go through in your youth really well. I mean, at the time, that I remember thinking, fuck, that's me, except for the the slant-eyed woman,